Chapter 7. Sibling Covenant. UEF Orbital Station, Refit 1. October 31st, 2263. 05:55 hours. "Move it, people!" Zeke barked as he led Anne, Jenkins, and Marcus in a running gunfight through Refit 1's embattled halls, modules, concourses, and chambers, pursued relentlessly by Imperial boarding teams. Many of their attackers were organized, but some of the Legionnaires broke ranks and operated like feral pack hunters, chasing the station's inhabitants through the halls like prey. Anne was the only one who wasn't out of breath, puffing on her cigar. Ordinarily, Zeke would have considered this to be a tactical error, as Imperial legionaries had an incredible sense of smell. But the competing scents of battle smoke and burning chemicals masked the sweet smell of the cigar. Explosive decompressions boomed in the distance, and the coppery stench of blood and burning flesh clogged the air. It was very difficult to see through the ever-present haze of smoke and airborne impurities. The all-too-familiar adrenaline of battle thundered through Zeke's veins. He'd hoped to get some sleep before being plunged into hell so soon after the Mars retreat, but the universe clearly hated him. Zeke spotted Imperial boarders subjecting anyone who surrendered to a full-body bioscan. Those found with the phage were murdered with no questions asked. If Imperial bioscanners were accurate, it seemed like more than half of the station's inhabitants had active cases of the nanophage, from barely detectable to symptomatic with visible skin lesions. Those who didn't have the phage were marched to waiting prisoner transports that had broken into the landing bays. If anyone resisted, Imperial legionaries killed them without a second thought. During a break in the frantic fighting, Jenkins paused at a bulkhead with a hand on her heaving chest, staring at a truly macabre sight ahead. Zeke and Marcus caught up with her a moment later, with Anne and Lincoln bringing up their rear. At the center of dozens of fallen Federation personnel lay a single power-armored Imperial legionary, pummeled to death by sheer weight of numbers and small arms fire. Spatters of gore decorated the walls, and the survivors had long since fled. Every one of the Emperor's super soldiers was capable of bone-breaking strength, inhuman speed, and nearly endless endurance. This was the evidence. Slaughter on an industrial scale. "It's horrible," Jenkins said, eyes tearing with sadness. "Look at what they were forced to do." "This is a thresher blade of the Sicariat Legion, which forms the spear tip of the Emperor's Legion forces. They're the worst of the worst when it comes to close combat. First in, last out," Marcus explained for Jenkins's benefit, checking the warrior's corpse for signs of life. But thankfully there were none. Covering their flanks and watching adjacent corridors, Anne's lip curled at the delay, but Zeke knelt beside Jenkins. "You'd be surprised what people will sacrifice for their buddies, kid." "We must move on, Zeke," snapped Anne. Lincoln croaked in assent. "Just give me a sec, will ya?" Zeke said, fixing Jenkins with an iron stare. "You're probably too young to remember this, kid, but the Colossi people were our brothers once, our extended human family. The ones I knew were beyond honorable. They helped to rebuild the Earth after the Great War, though the reason we called them Colossi is because they chose to stay up there instead of resettling to the homeworld after the Great War. But the Federation did them dirty, let Colossus fall to ruin over the last century. In that situation, it only took one man to twist them into these monsters." Jenkins didn't respond, and Zeke left out the details of his sister's involvement in the Empire's formation as he continued. "That's the evil we're fighting to stop. You've got to be able to stare into Emperor Hadrian Mariko's heart of darkness and have faith that we can make some kind of difference. That's what we do, Shrimp. That's Nightshade's role." "Raging against the dying of the light," Jenkins whispered. "You got it, kid." "We have incoming," Anne said, firing her twin Gauss pistols at several new pursuers, who had come crashing through a bulkhead within engagement distance. Marcus helped Jenkins to her feet. "Let's go, Private. There's plenty of raging left to do. The command sector is dead ahead," said the lieutenant, casting Zeke a meaningful glance. Several modules onward, with Anne covering their rear, Zeke blasted the door panel ahead. The module portal slid partially open, with an agonized scraping sound. Beyond was a hotly contested security checkpoint protecting the command center's tall, armored blast doors. Stray gunfire and laser blasts flashed through the open door, forcing Zeke to wave everyone back. Blood and smoking Gauss slug holes peppered the inner bulkheads. Some of the damage looked dangerously close to starting an explosive decompression into the raw vacuum outside. But most Imperials wore environmentally sealed battle armor. It didn't seem to care about that kind of risk. The stench of burned plastic and weapons discharge hung in the hazy air. Corpses wearing tattered coveralls littered the floor. A trio of off-duty, unarmored UEF Marines hunkered inside a security office, while a full squad of Solar Empire legionaries advanced on them, cackling with chemically driven insanity over the automatic roar of their weapons, turning the thin walls of the checkpoint office into Swiss cheese. They were taunting them. A fearsome captain led the Imperials, stomping forth in a super-heavy, powered warsuit that bled steam and the sound of chugging gears. She held a civilian technician in her mechanical grip as she bellowed through a rebreather implant comprising the lower half of her face and skull. "Victory awaits, brethren! We shall purge these unclean bearers of the phage! Mankind must be purified for our great lord's future!" With a minor twitch of her powered gauntlet, the captain broke the man's neck with a wicked snap, tossing the civilian's limp form to the deck. Her legionaries howled like wild apes, continuing their advance on the doomed Federation Marines. Zeke snarled, turning to his companions. "I have the leader. Our priority is saving those men and entering the command center." Jenkins and Marcus nodded, while Anne shot at Imperial auxiliary troopers advancing on them from behind, picking them off easily. "I'll keep our flanks clear. Show me you haven't lost your edge, brother." "Is that a challenge, Anne?" No comment. Zeke grasped Jenkins' shoulder, nodding at her. "You've got this, kid." Jenkins nodded back, taking a deep breath. "Yes, sir. I'm good, sir." "Excellent. Now, cover me. Open fire," he said, charging the Imperials from behind. As he barreled toward the enemy, Zeke's companions hosed the legionaries using stolen Imperial rifles they'd found that Jenkins had unlocked for use by disabling their biometric security systems. Supersonic slugs battered the Imperial troopers' energy shields and inches-thick plating. Anne blurred out of sight to assault more targets emerging from a penetration pod that had crashed through the corridor several modules behind them. Lincoln flapped into the fray beside Zeke, using his bladed wings to slice vulnerable points on enemy armor suits. One of the terror troopers managed to report a sighting of Commander Oakfield and the Outlaw of Colossus, before Lincoln cut off his transmission with a flash of razor-sharp feathers and a spray of dark gore, passing right through the man's ballistic energy shield. Zeke sidestepped two hulking legionnaire brutes and continued his beeline for their captain, who was firing her arm-mounted Gauss cannon at the checkpoint office. As the captain noticed him, she laughed, triggering the jump jets strapped to her armor to skid away from him. Zeke really wanted that jet kit. "Ah, the great Commander Oakfield in the flesh," the captain chortled. "I am Imperious Beta of the World Killer Legion, and I was hoping to find you. Your capture will bring me eternal prestige in our great hierarchy. You shall face the Emperor personally, and then you will know true fear." He's not that scary," Zeke said. He ducked behind a falling shock trooper to avoid the captain's furious reply of explosive Gauss slugs, which tore the man apart, warsuit and all. Zeke sidestepped a vicious rifle swing from another legionnaire, whose shields popped under fire from Marcus and Jenkins before Lincoln finished him off. Zeke lunged to strike through the Imperial captain's shield envelope at her unprotected skull, but she jetted out of the way again, leaving trails on the blood-slick floor. Her pupils flared in annoyance, lit by internal diodes. The woman's hair was buzzed to a close crop, but Zeke could see that it was patchy, clear evidence of phage infection. Zeke was drenched in sweat, out of breath, and fatigued from non-stop fighting, but he couldn't resist taunting her. "Ha ha! Your whole game is stamping out the phage, but you're practically swimming in it, lady. You've been conned into a deal with the devil." "Ignorant whelp! Our science has conquered the vile pathogen!" the captain bellowed in return. Her armored fist rocketed around, powered by her armor's industrial synth muscle systems. Zeke twisted to dodge, boots skidding on the deck. The officer missed him, barely, and punched right through the thick module wall with a deafening crash. Gunfire and screaming echoed in from the other side of the sparking bulkhead. The Solar Empire captain ripped her mechno-fist free in a shower of sparking power conduits and charged at Zeke with terrifying speed, driven by a potent combination of psychostimulant drugs. Zeke ducked and weaved her flurry of strikes, barely able to keep up. "Don't you Federation cowards fight best when you're not alone?" the captain taunted. Zeke had to agree with her. He might have overextended himself here. With a buzz of joint servos and whipping power cabling, she delivered a backhanded swipe that would have smashed Zeke's spine if he hadn't corkscrewed his body in midair, feeling the fatal whistle of displaced oxygen as he barely cleared the blow. But as his feet came back down, the captain grazed his jaw with a follow-up strike, moving faster than the speed of sound. Zeke went down in a haze and slid 5 meters, knocked into next week. The woman's clawed metal gauntlet was around his head merely seconds later, lifting him off the deck. "Too easy," the captain chortled. Zeke groaned, swinging his fists at her, neck muscles straining. He couldn't tell if his jaw was broken or if it was attached at all. The room swam. He faintly heard Marcus yelling his name, firing his rifle one-handed in his real arm, as his synthetic arm had been damaged during the intense firefight. But the other Imperials had Zeke's companions pinned behind the doors, unable to help him. He would be embarrassed if this is how he went out, clawing at the captain's armored gauntlet as she increased pressure on his skull. His vision dimmed. Out of nowhere, Anne collided with the Imperial captain like a runaway freight train, driven by her flight jets. Deck plates buckled under Anne's boots, and lighting strips blew out from the shockwave of the impact. Zeke was thrown clear again, slamming into the bloody deck several meters away. His sister went into full combat overdrive, impossible to follow with the naked eye. With cybernetic strength and speed exceeding even the post-human Imperial officer's might, Anne pummeled the ever-living crap out of the monstrous woman. The Imperial captain was emblematic of everything that Emperor Hadrian Mariko wanted humanity to become. Twisted, vile, and full of unearned power. Anne channeled her vengeance through limbs of titanium. She reappeared from the hyper-lethal melee, bleeding off her momentum, jump jets cooling back down. Steam blasted from Anne's cybernetic arm and leg through vents that deployed like airplane flaps. Her hat was still somehow on her head, and her glasses shone with red light. The Imperial Legionnaire's wrist-mounted Gauss weapon fired off a few final slugs as she slumped to the deck, coughing dark infected blood, armor malfunctioning, unable to move. Anne looked momentarily unsteady on her feet, but quickly regained her focus. Zeke gingerly massaged his bruised, fractured lower jaw, which would need medical attention at some point. "Ugh, show off," he said with slurred speech, struggling to rise. Anne raised an eyebrow. "I don't know what you're talking about, brother." She hauled Zeke to his feet, and together They approached the fallen captain. Zeke began dragging the jet kit harness off her ruined battlesuit. Mine now. Jenkins, Marcus, and Lincoln cut down the remaining Imperial troopers, while Zeke and Anne hauled the captain's half-ton armored bulk into a nearby exterior airlock. The Imperial barked weak threats the entire way, but was powerless to stop them in her dead armor. You need to chill, Zeke said. He hammered the door panel to cycle the atmosphere, just as the colonel's men had done to him. The captain glared up through the transparent viewport at the two siblings. Kill one of us. Kill 1,000. 1,000,000. We'll never stop coming. The Solar Empire will be... the captain said. But the airlock blasted her out into open vacuum. Flushed away like the mistake you all were, Anne concluded. She spat out her spent cigar. Lincoln flapped over to settle onto Anne's shoulder with an invisible puff of anti-grav energy. Dark blood steamed on his iron wings. It never ends, does it? Zeke said, huffing out a breath, picking up the captain's jump jets. Anne raised her eyebrows at the jumbled mess in his hands, dripping with armor coolant and black blood. A little bit DIY, don't you think? From my sister, that's a compliment, Zeke said as he massaged his jaw, gesturing to Anne's custom jet kit, integrated into her outfit by her own hand. Marcus approached, holding his cyborg arm together with his real hand, which sparked from damage incurred during their battle across the station. Nice work, Anne. And nice find, Commander. It's a pale copy of the real deal, but it'll have to do, Zeke said. While Jenkins took a look at Marcus's damaged arm, using a few tools she had on hand to reroute power and reboot the limb, Anne helped Zeke fasten buckles, strap on the jet kit's haptic palm controls, and tied off power leads to 2 damaged jets. A limited exoskeleton connected the jets, which wouldn't do much to block enemy fire, but it would give Zeke a minor strength boost and hold his body together during high-G maneuvers. Jenkins glanced at Zeke as she worked on Marcus's cybernetics, noting the blood soaking his face and fatigues. Quite the look, Commander, sir. This ain't a fashion show, kid, said Zeke. Watch me closely. If we survive this house of horrors, jet kit training is next on your list. Every member of my squadron knows how to fly. The 3 Federation guardsmen emerged cautiously from the security office, cringing at every echo of battle from the connecting passageways. Commander, thank you. They had us dead to rights. I'm Tarun, of the Apendra 21st Marine Battalion. We were reassigned here after Mars, where your people, they saved us, sir. We owe you our lives twice now. The young man in the lead said, wiping sweat from his brow. The 2 others nodded with gratitude. My pleasure, Colonel Tarun. I've got a strict no man left behind policy, Zeke said, reading his rank insignia. We have let's call it a meeting with the Admiral, and then we're going to try and save this station. If you want to live, unlock those blast doors and come with us. We can't, sir, Corporal Tarun replied. We've been trying to open the command sector since everything started. It's been locked. Of course he's locked it down, the goddamn coward, Zeke groaned. Shrimp? Jenkins's head snapped up from Marcus's arm, which had regained the ability to move on its own. Yes, sir? Zeke snapped his fingers and pointed at the tall, chunky doors. Slice those blast doors, kid, please and thank you. Jenkins looked up. The portal was reinforced with thick spars, and it was armored to a nearly ridiculous degree. She said. You impressed me when we pulled you off that red rock. If you can keep an entire Imperial fleet off balance with nothing but code, this thing should be no big deal for you, Zeke said, rapping a fist on the huge doors. They'll be on us again soon. Get to work. Marcus flexed his synthetic fingers, nodding in approval of Jenkins's quick repair work. "Go on, Private. The damage isn't catastrophic. And thank you." Jenkins cracked her knuckles. "No problem. And it'll be a piece of cake, Commander." "Prove it." Zeke pointed to the console. Fortunately, Jenkins was as good as she said, cracking the door in under a minute. "It's done," she announced, as the cacophony of combat came within visual range. A large group of Imperial legionaries appeared in a conjoining corridor several hundred meters away, charging toward the checkpoint like armored bulls. More boarding pods crashed through the hall behind them, burning through the station's layers with high-powered laser drills, deploying human auxiliary troopers and automatons in the wake of the Emperor's post-human monsters. Anne stood in the enemy's path, assuming a defensive stance as Lincoln lined up targeting lasers for her. Anne's greatcoat billowed as she fired at the disgorging hordes, while everyone else took cover against the bulkheads, letting the gunslinger's shields absorb incoming fire. The armored portal's locks retracted with great, chunky booms. It rumbled open to reveal a well-lit command center, dominated by transparent, blast-proof windows. Several squads of Marines stood near the command center's door, but they were in a neutral stance, only raising their weapons when the giant doors rumbled open. Every one of them looked shocked at the door's opening. There were 2 other entrances into the massive module, also similarly guarded. The chamber's occupants ducked out of the way as incoming Imperial fire tore through the doorway. Powell gets an army to guard him while the rest of this place becomes a slaughterhouse. Why am I not surprised? Zeke said, snarling as Gauss rounds fired by the Imperials zipped past, pinging off overturned desks. Jenkins raised her hands as 15 rifles targeted them, but Zeke swept the kid inside, charging into the command center after her. "Stay back!" called the head of security from the other side of an overturned console, as his men snapped off shots at the Imperials behind them. "Reseal this door, right now! You don't have permission to enter this area. Admiral's orders." "We go where we want," growled Zeke. Blood dripped from his hands, stolen jet kit, and commandeered weapons as he stomped toward the defenders, who kept firing past him. "Powell, where are you hiding?" he bellowed. "The least you can do is show yourself." Nothing but silence greeted him as Anne backed through the blast doors, trading gunfire with the approaching hordes, whirling and dodging individual shots to save her shield barrier's backup batteries. "Get the door, shrimp," Zeke growled, while Marcus ushered Tarun and the other surviving Upendra Marines inside. Jenkins hurried to the controls, while Lincoln soared above the UEF defense personnel and station technicians, scanning the chamber for damage to its vacuum seals. No one fired at him to avoid damaging the chamber's thick windows. Several hundred people occupied the vast space, mostly Northern Hemispheric orbital defense troopers. Many lacked battle armor, and their weapons were a motley collection from the chamber's emergency lockers. Technicians sat at the consoles surrounding 2 large holographic situation tables mounted on the raised command area, but they didn't appear to be tasked with anything. Outside, the Solar Empire fleet passed over Refit 1 and the orbital defense rings, continuing to disgorge thousands of manned torpedoes and bulk troop landers. None of the network defense platforms were firing. Boarders overwhelmed docked Federation warships, including those undergoing repairs. Clouds of ship-killer missiles fired from the IWF destroyers Rubiconius and Tutankhamun overwhelmed the UEF-SC cruiser Iron Eiffel, which must have reacted quickly enough to fend off the initial boarding parties. There wasn't nearly enough resistance to make a meaningful dent against the sheer scale of this invasion. The sight of Earth's orbital defense network being overrun so easily made Zeke feel like a mountain weight on his shoulders. He'd seen too many people die already, too many friends and too many comrades taken by Hadrian Mariko's war, and things were about to become infinitely worse for those who had survived until now. "Sir, The Admiral's orders were to keep this module sealed until he says otherwise. You don't have clearance for this zone, the security chief complained over the roaring gunfight. Stow it, jackass. I'm not waiting to die out there because Powell says so, Zeke said, pushing the security chief's weapon aside as he stalked past. Anne took the brunt of incoming fire on her shields as she shot through the shrinking opening at the raging Imperial hulks, charging the command center like out-of-control trucks. Muffled gunfire and explosives ricocheted off the outside of the huge door as it boomed shut. Where's the Admiral? I'm ready for my sentence, Powell, Zeke said, unleashing his frustration that had built up during their blood-soaked journey. You don't know what you're dealing with, Commander. A slurred, wobbly voice responded from the upper area of the command center. Rear Admiral Powell lurched to the edge of the raised dais. He was drunk, more so than he'd sounded earlier over the intercom. Powell even had a hip flask clutched in one meaty hand. Zeke's brow furrowed. In better times, a man like him never would have risen through the Federation's ranks to his current station, but decades of corruption and nepotism had degenerated the military to the point where it was very possible. The modern UEF was led by so much cowardice and dishonor that Zeke could scarcely believe it. Powell was overweight and profoundly ugly, with a balding scalp that shone in the overhead lighting as he continued his slurred, sweaty rant. We had no choice but to do this, Commander. Take your criminal sister and leave this place. The deal with Mariko is done. We must give this station to him, and in return, we live. Several troopers on the lower level looked up at the Admiral in shock. Apparently, not everyone had been made aware of this harebrained scheme in its entirety. Zeke's boot hit the first step of the command platform, making Powell flinch. The Admiral's personal guards stepped forward, but they hadn't raised their rifles yet. Who allowed thousands of drugged-up, murderous psychos in here to play with unarmed civilian refugees and a skeleton garrison? Was this you? Or does this go right to the top? Zeke demanded. Powell stiffened, and more words tumbled out of his loose mouth. The phage has spread too far, Commander, and we cannot continue this war under current economic conditions. The Council's decision is necessary for our continued survival as a civilization. Zeke wiped blood from his cracked jaw and bleeding nose, stomping upward. Necessary? He asked. They decided that it was necessary to throw away 4 years of holding back these animals? Millions dead, half the Sol system ruined, and UEF Command decides to toss all our sacrifices in the trash at the 11th hour? The decision was nearly unanimous, said Powell. All but one of the Strategos Council voted to surrender. Appeasement was our only solution to this war, after you sacrificed half the Fourth Fleet in the catastrophe at Mars. The Council deemed this entire conflict to be non-viable after that. Now we have a conditional ceasefire with the Emperor, who is coming here personally. Does this look like a ceasefire to you? Zeke roared, extending his hand back to gesture at the rest of the station behind him, which was visible through the module's enormous viewing windows. Many parts of the sprawling habitat were on fire, or venting atmosphere, as the rampaging Imperials continued their phage purges. The Admiral's personal guards raised their weapons as Zeke crested the last few stairs. That's enough, Commander. One more step, and we shoot, one of them ordered. Zeke froze, realizing what he was walking into. He looked at his fists, which shook slightly. The UEF still had a chain of command, and even his insubordination had limits. But if the Federation military truly had surrendered, crossing this line meant nothing. He knew how to handle this. Kid, get up here, he growled. Powell glared at him. Zeke could smell the alcohol in the man from meters away. Jenkins appeared at his rear, taking the stairs 3 at a time. "Sir? Sign into that console. Pull up every Refit 1 camera feed you can, and put them on the central view screen over there," Zeke said, gesturing to a nearby terminal, which a terrified technician began to back away from. Powell immediately protested. "Absolutely not! Doing that will compromise our operational security. We must remain sealed off here until the Imperials are finished their takeover." "It's either this, or I shoot you, your people shoot me, and a lot of people die unnecessarily. Your choice," Zeke said. The threat of mutually assured destruction was enough for Powell, and Zeke had a crazy enough look in his eye for it to be believable. The Admiral relented, shrugging his shoulders. Fine. I won't change anything." With a final glance at Zeke, who nodded to her, Jenkins crossed the command dais to the console and began pulling up different camera feeds, which began to play simultaneously out across the giant view screen for all in the chamber to see. It was pure slaughter. Mess halls, workshops, and storage bays were choked with bodies, ongoing firefights, or they were open to the frigid vacuum outside. UEF personnel, civilians, and refugees alike were being scanned by hulking Legionnaire invaders, or the baseline human auxiliary troopers that followed in their bloody wake. Those with active phage cases were immediately killed, eliciting gasps and low comments from throughout the vast command module. "Whatever the Emperor promised you, it was a lie," Zeke said, more to the crowd than to the Admiral, before rounding on Powell directly. "You've been a backbencher for the entire war, and you don't know the Empire like we do, Powell. You've never seen the messes they leave behind, the massacres, civilian casualties, the phage purges. I can't watch it happen anymore." "Logistics were never your strength, Commander," argued Powell, glaring at Zeke. "By saving those damned Martian civilians instead of following my orders, you tossed away hundreds of vital assets that could have defended the homeworld from this invasion. Dozens of capital ships and their materiel, all wasted. But no matter. The deal is done. I have locked Refit 1's core systems down, so not even my command codes can reactivate our defenses now. We must receive the Empire peacefully, or they will kill us." Zeke ignored him, crossing to the command station's railing so he could speak to the multitudes below, jabbing a finger at the scenes of Imperial slaughter playing out across the orbital beyond their doors. "This is what Powell wants. When he lets them in here, those Imperials will kill anyone with a phage infection, and the rest of you will be taken prisoner. The proof is right up there on that screen. Who do you want protecting you when those monsters start knocking on those doors? Him or me?" "No! Only those with the phage are at risk. No one else will be harmed as long as we do not resist," screamed the Admiral. Then he went quiet as he realized what he was saying. Murmurs rippled through the assembled crowd. Zeke knew that statistically, many of them likely had minor phage infections, and even if they were clean, everyone knew the stories about Imperial prisons. Marcus grinned up at Zeke with approval. Anne stood at the bottom of the stairs with him, watching her brother with a thoughtful look. Zeke looked at Powell, but his words were not for the Admiral. "You drink on the eve of the Federation's greatest betrayal and lock yourself safely away behind everyone here, I might add, while thousands more die needlessly. Where's the logic in that? Where's the honor or the care for your fellow man? Those under your responsibility should not have their lives wasted so pointlessly, left to the mercy of the enemy with no warning." Jenkins set the bloody camera scenes to repeat, but Zeke's point had already been made. The energy in the room was swiftly turning against the Admiral. The chamber's defenders didn't take kindly to being so misled, as more murmurs spread around the echoing space. Only the Admiral's personal guards remained resolute by his side. Powell deflated like a balloon. Zeke took another step toward him, and though the guards raised their rifles again, they didn't fire. "There's no need for this," Zeke growled. You're a worm, Powell, more reprehensible than I thought you could possibly be. You showed your true colors at Mars, leaving so many to die, which makes your actions here unsurprising to me. You are no soldier, not after compromising your duty to protect our people, and choosing to hide in here, at the bottom of a bottle, to absolve yourself of the pain and the remorse? That tells me that you knew how wrong it all was. Powell's face had turned completely red, and then it went purple with rage, as he finally clued in to the game that Zeke was playing. But Nightshade Squadron's commander wasn't quite done, as the onlookers throughout the command center began to approach the dais as well. I think you have some explaining to do, Zeke said, eyeing the crowd. Screw the Admiral! Someone shouted from the deck below. Other voices rose in protest. He lied to us! Zeke didn't smile or even gloat. He simply turned his back on the Admiral and his guards. Mutiny! Subversion! You won't get away with what you're doing, Oakfield! Powell slurred, barely able to get the words out through his drunken stupor. Zeke had nothing more to say to him, walking away as dozens of Marines and other personnel came up the stairs to the command area, passing Zeke to approach the Admiral and his people from every direction. As Zeke had hoped, not a single shot was fired, as the Fat Man and his loyal cronies were subdued by the overwhelming force of their former subordinates. Handcuffs were produced. Soon, they were seated in a guarded row behind the command table, utterly defeated. A sharp hissing noise caught Zeke's attention. Commander, Marcus called from the floor below. We have a problem. Looking to the edge of the module chamber, Zeke saw that one of the massive entryways had a widening, glowing spot in the center. 30 meters away, a similar spot appeared on the second door as well. Marcus looked up at him. They're coming, sir. We're out of time. Shit, here we go, Zeke said, after a deep breath. Powell's plan was to let them in after the slaughter out there was over. But this module is defensible enough. Marcus, get everyone organized down there. Get some desks overturned for defensive positions and defilade, and establish enfilade brackets on those doors with interlocking fields of fire. You know the drill. They're gonna hit us hard. Don't expect mercy from the Empire because Powell made a deal with them to hand over this station and its people. Affirmative, Commander, Marcus said, stirring the command center's Marines and other armed personnel into action, bolstering the room's defenses however they could. Zeke whirled on the rest of the people manning the command dais. All of you, civilians, technicians, whatever it is you do, consider yourselves recruited as well. Reverse Powell's system lockout and get this station's exterior and interior defenses back online. If you're not feeling up for that, you can grab yourself a rifle. That means you too, kid. Jenkins, who was still in awe of Zeke's peaceful takedown of Powell's authority, nodded and saluted without another word, joining the command area civilians at the workstations. Anne quietly ascended the steps and addressed Zeke as he was pulling weapons from a locker under the tactical holotable. That was well done, brother. But now our objective is complete, she said. We found Powell and heard it from the man himself. This war is over, and the Emperor is coming. I held up my end. Now hold up yours. I need Nightshade. My shuttle is waiting for us. Zeke shifted his sister to the far end of the command area, out of the traitorous Admiral's earshot. I hear you, Anne, but I can't leave these people, and Nightshade can't get to us without revealing themselves. If the Imperials detect the Solanum, they'll wipe my people out before we ever get a chance to hit Mariko. We are stuck here. Zeke, I understand that you feel protective over these people. You've developed some survivor's guilt over the course of the war, which is fair. I have it too. But if we cut the head off the snake today, before Mariko's power over the Federation is ratified, Anne said, drawing a thumb across her throat, then his empire will die with him. We'll save billions by doing this. Mariko's warlords will destroy each other after he's gone. It's built into their philosophy. Afterward, We can rebuild the Federation without the corruption that prompted the Empire's creation in the first place. Your little display with Powell proves your capabilities beyond those of a warfighter. I need you to lead everyone in the aftermath, because I'm the last person who should be doing so. That's flattering, but I don't leave people behind. I'm sorry, Zeke said with finality. And besides, how are we going to get out of here? We can't survive in a vacuum like you can. There's an army between us and wherever you landed your shuttle. Anne snapped her fingers, and a red orb rose into view outside the void glass. Whoever said that I landed it? Zeke recognized her stolen shuttle, sleek and curved like the high-altitude stealth planes of ancient times. Ha! Clever girl. It has a boarding umbilical. I can extract you, Lieutenant Maximilian, and even the girl right out of this module, maybe with a handful of others. But Deliverance doesn't have the life support for anyone else, Anne said. Her cold cyber eyes flashed red. It's time to go, brother. Our real mission awaits. Hold on a second. What exactly is your plan to off the big man? Zeke asked, as the gears in his head clunked and turned. Are you just gonna, board Mariko's flagship and ask for an audience with him? What's your intel? Details, sister. Where is this happening? How is this happening? Anne remained silent. The hissing of breaching lasers grew louder. Chunks of molten titanium dribbled onto the deck. It depends on where Mariko surfaces, she said. But I need Nightshade to help plan the exact circumstances of the strike and then execute the operation. Okay, so you're telling me that you don't have a concrete strategy? As usual, Zeke grinned at her. Anne showed her perfect artificial teeth, sighing. I wouldn't exactly say that, but there wasn't enough time to gather intelligence on Mariko's exact plans after intercepting the UEF surrender transmission. I had to get to Earth before the Emperor's fleet arrived, so yes, to some extent, I'm making this up as I go. As always, Zeke said, fixing her with an intense glare. Okay then. Do you really want to get Mariko? More than anything, brother. What are you prepared to sacrifice? Remember who you're talking to, Zeke. Anne's eyes flashed, and her scarred brow wrinkled. Opening this door means going all the way, Zeke warned. We've got to flip the table and change the game. Mariko won't give up. He can't. Neither can we. Anne's cold cybernetic eyes narrowed. I know. I do want to get him. But I've been trying for years, and nothing's come of it. Every plan has failed. That's why I came to you. Then if you want to get him, we do it my way, Zeke said, with a devious grin. We know that they want the commander of Nightshade Squadron alive. We'll give him to them. That's our advantage, because they'll drag me straight to the guy. I can get him to open up. That's completely insane, Zeke. You said it yourself. I know Hadrian, and he knows me. We've got history. If they capture me, he won't be able to resist gloating. I'll get him talking about where he'll be and what his plans are, Zeke said, winking at his sister. That's insane, Anne repeated. Even for you. His magical psychic mumbo-jumbo doesn't scare me. I owe you this one, Anne, for failing to protect you all those years ago. Let me do this, all right? Thank you, Zeke. But what about Nightshade? They won't act without your orders if you're not there to... And... Zeke held up a finger. You'll personally pass Nightshade the intel I get out of the Emperor about his plans and where he'll be, then you'll work with my people to plan and execute the operation, as you said. I can't give you overall command, but you're our best source of information on Mariko, even without my intel. I can't ask you to do this, Zeke. He's the most powerful being in the solar system. Our parents didn't raise a coward. Now, where's that bird? Lincoln, who had been monitoring the door, landed on Anne's shoulder. Can he still do that thing he used to do with the listening implant? Zeke asked. If you mean implanting the whisper device, then yes, Anne said. Zeke nodded. Do it. Lincoln produced a tiny implant from his beak and poked Zeke hard in the mastoid muscle under his shaggy hair to hide the mark. It'll let you hear what I do? Zeke asked, scratching the implantation site. It'll capture any audio within 30 meters of you. The broadcast range is several thousand kilometers, though jamming fields may shorten that range considerably. And don't poke at it. The weakened command center blast door reached its critical melting point, collapsing inward in a slow-motion deluge of white-hot metal. Lincoln blurted out in alarm. Zeke's eyes hardened. And before you go, he yanked his identification tags free. One slid open, revealing a recording device, into which Zeke spoke a concise message. There's your verification, so my guys know that this plan of ours is legit. This'll also give you access to one of our encrypted channels, so you can contact Nightshade directly once you're out of here. Lieutenant Luther will have overall command of the operation, as I said, but she'll defer to your expertise when appropriate. Zeke handed his tags to Anne. She grasped his hand, locking him in with her gaze. Last chance to back out, brother. You don't have to walk into the lion's den for this. We can find another way to get the intel we need on Mariko's plans. Zeke shrugged. I've been meaning to have words with Hadrian ever since he tried to kill you. Better late than never. Some friend he turned out to be. Now go find my people and wait for all the spicy gossip to come through. Ride like the wind, Anne. I promise I'll be there when the time comes to help end your ex. Don't make promises you can't keep, Anne said, dropping her voice to a growl. I wouldn't dare, Zeke replied. They clasped their forearms again, just like old times. It's a deal. Good luck, Zeke. And please, please be careful. You too, kiddo. I've always despised that name, brother. The last layer of the door folded downward with a sharp hiss, catching their attention. A glowing purple photoreceptor appeared, leering into the command center through rising steam and smoke. Our gargantuan Solar Empire warbot waded through the melted door to clear the way for the horde that followed. The Imperial fools had really deployed one of their frontline armored units on a goddamn vacuum-sealed orbital station. Fire! 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 Marcus barked with a controlled voice at the module's occupants. Over 100 automatic weapons opened up, pelting the warbot's array of energy shields in a furious storm. Go, Anne! Go! Zeke shouted at his sister, grabbing a weapon off the operations table as he ran. He fired his jury-rigged jump jets and rocketed toward the vaulted ceiling, dodging torrents of Gauss fire, rockets, and laser blasts as the wild Imperial legionaries charged into the command center. Anne nodded, blasting off in the other direction, toward one of the huge windows.